All right, so let's find your seat here today. If you like, closing the eyes. Taking a moment here to relax the mind. Relaxing the body. You'll be coming into the heart area of your body. Feeling that part of you. Arriving in this seat here today. Arriving in this moment. If there are any background noises, allow them to be just to be. Maybe coming in and out of the awareness. Doing perhaps a short body scan right now, starting with the top of the head, the forehead, the space between the ears, around the eyes, the jaw, the back of the head and the neck, shoulders, the front and back of the chest, noticing the arms hanging off of the shoulders, the weight of the arms. The hands, softening in the belly, aware of the basin of the pelvis. Perhaps bringing some awareness to the organs inside the chest and the belly. The genitals, the low back, the buttocks, thighs, fronts and backs of the thighs, and the knees, backs of the knees, the lower legs, and the ankles, the feet, noticing what the feet are touching. And the inside of the toes. And any other place in the body I might have neglected to mention. Simply putting the attention there. And if you like, bringing the attention now to the heart area. Feeling into that space. And feeling into the space of what truly matters. Perhaps noticing your moral sensitivity. Your ethical sensitivity. The wholesome intentions that bring you to practice. What your deepest values are. If you'd like to end the formal sit here, please feel free. If you'd like to listen to these words as you sit in meditation, feel free to do that as well. Today, I really want to talk about ethical sensitivity as a way of life. Who we are, how we behave, what guides us. Many of us have lost our way. We've forgotten who we truly are. We've forgotten our common humanity, our basic interdependence, interconnectedness, that we belong to each other. Our different views should not be separating us into opposing camps, into opposing each other. Sickness of anyone affects all of us. Hurting each other out of ignorance and ill will hurts all of us. We want to trust our leaders to do the right thing, the wholesome and wise thing, for the benefit of all of us. This is a crucial time in our history, one that demands that we turn more and more toward ethical sensitivity. The Dharma can provide that kind of grounding for wisdom and compassion. Do we become part of the polarization? Don't side with yourself in your own views. Don't side with yourself is a Zen proverb. It's easy now, whichever political side we are on, to become self-righteous, indignant, and arrogant. It's as if my being right is at the expense of others being wrong. How can we become an instrument of change with what's happening in the world? For many of you who have been around Buddhist teachings, you're aware of what's called Sila practice, S-I-L-A, which is the practice of ethical conduct the Buddha taught. It's easy to think about ethical practice as some moral dictum, being told what we should and shouldn't do. Ethical conduct is usually some directive that's coming from the outside. Don't do this and do that. What if ethics came from the inside? What if we found that goodness, integrity, and living by some rules comes from contemplation, mindfulness? From your deepest sense of what's wholesome and skillful. Rather than being guided by dictum, what if we paid more attention to what feels right on the inside, in the body, and in the heart? that informs the mind. The traditional guidelines for ethical practice, ethical behavior, there are 5 that we generally take and that we can live by. When we start any meditation retreat, we take these 5 precepts, guidelines for our behavior during our retreat. What if we took them in our daily lives? The first one is, I undertake the training to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. The first one is about non-harming. The second one is about not stealing, and very basically, not taking anything that is not freely given to us. The third is refraining from any harmful sexual activity, using our sexuality and sensuousness in responsible ways. Knowing how deeply our lives intertwine, we undertake the training to refrain from false and harmful speech. What if right now everyone took that vow? With what's going on, can you imagine if we all refrained from false and harmful speech? What would the world be like if that were happening? And the last of the 5 for our daily practice, for how we live, to refrain from taking intoxicants that cloud the mind and cause heedlessness. Do these ethical guidelines, do they make sense? Do they feel like they're your own? Taking whichever one or ones that feel intrinsic to you as a way of life, not just on retreat, not periodically, but how you live. Sila practice is usually about our conduct, our behavior, but what guides our conduct? What is it we truly believe? It's the way to be in the world. The way we care. The way we're awake. What if ethics came from the inside? What if we found that goodness, integrity, and living by the rules comes from contemplation and mindfulness, reflection? a short poem here from Hafiz called This Sane Idea. Let your intelligence begin to rule whenever you sit with others. Using this sane idea, leave all your cocked guns in a field far from us. One of those damn things might go off. What if we thought of the monastery is that the monastery is within us? What we do defines us, and ethics has to do with what we do. As we become more practiced in mindfulness, ethical thinking and values become more integral to the Buddhist practice as a way of life, not just when we're on the cushion, not when we're just in a class, but how we live, how we think, how we care for ourselves and each other. By practicing paying attention and reflection, listening to our hearts, we begin to develop a greater ethical sensitivity. Maybe you've noticed this has happened for you. That ethical sensitivity leads to a more wholesome life. We can develop a more ethical heart for the welfare of ourselves and each other. We can grow in wisdom as our concern for ourselves and others and the whole world becomes more a part of how we think. An ethical person encourages others to live in wholesome ways just by example. Maybe you've noticed that influence of being around somebody you find deeply sensitive in these ethical ways, that you've admired, that's been a mentor. Mindfulness practice in any and all parts of our lives leads to greater wisdom and compassion. You've probably noticed this happening for you. We begin to see our interdependence, our reliance on the well-being of all of us. Never before has this been so apparent to me as now with the COVID crisis. If we think about just wearing a mask, what that means. That our protecting ourselves and each other are intertwined. They're the same. When we cultivate ethical sensitivity, we become more aware of what causes harm and what is wholesome. In the traditional teachings, the greatest harm comes from what are called the three characteristics: greed, hatred, and delusion. Greed, that wanting mind, that grasping mind, not letting go, can't be sated, always wanting more. And clinging to view is part of greed, that clinging mind. I'm right. I'm right, you're wrong. Hatred, ill will. We're seeing a lot of this lately. This is the cause of polarization, of othering, of creating self and other. It's the basis of racism. And it's promoting violence now. Delusion, often described as ignorance, gives rise to greed and hatred. It's not seeing clearly. It's not understanding. Delusion is a way of living without ethics, without an internal moral guide. Ethics is part of the Noble Eightfold Path, which starts with right or wise view and then goes on to wise intention. It informs us. Ethical sensitivity is intertwined with all of the Eightfold Path factors. It moves us away from causing any harm to wholesome, caring thought, beliefs, and actions. Ethical sensitivity helps us exchange self for other, the cultivation of empathy and deep understanding of ourselves and each other, to see where we are different and the same. To counter greed, hatred, and delusion, we can develop these beautiful states of mind, the Brahma Viharas, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. There's a larger list of these beautiful states of mind called the paramitas, or the 10 perfections. Generosity, that dispels the greed for that which can be given away. Virtue, inner morality, blameless conduct, renunciation, restraint. We see a lack of restraint these days. Wisdom, energy, the effort that made you show up here today to practice. Patience, truthfulness, that cultivates authenticity. Determination, staying the course now in these very difficult times. Loving kindness, cultivating our capacity to care. And equanimity, impartiality. And I'd like to conclude here with a quote from Robert Kennedy. He said, "Each time a person stands up for an ideal or acts to improve the lot of others or strikes out against injustice, they send forth a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a current that can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance. If you'd like to bring the palms together in prayer position, taking these few moments to see what has arisen for you right now, taking note of where you are, connecting with what really matters to you. Connecting with your own ethical sensitivity. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Feel free to move about.